What's going on, guys? Dropadooski here. Today we are going to do the quick and dirty guide for the Jade Harvester setup for solo pushing for the Witch Doctor. Now, the Jade Harvester build has not changed much in the past couple of seasons, but I thought since I'll be doing Witch Doctor for Season 10, super excited about it. I want to do this build in particular because I think that it's very fun. It's super viable. Now, Firebat still does a little bit more damage, but I have seen a lot of these Jade builds on the leaderboards very high up, and I will show you some of that as we go through this guide. And I just think it's a super fun build to play. So let's go ahead and jump on over into the gear. For this setup, you run the 6-piece Jade Harvester set. Now, this build is heavily reliant on area damage. So wherever you can get area damage and haunt damage, haunt is your primary damage source. So any of you guys that aren't familiar with this set, you're casting Haunt and you're casting Locust Swarm once, right? And what this set enables you to do is when you use Soul Harvest, it consumes all of the damage that your Haunt was going to do over 300 seconds instantly. So it's kind of a very bursty build, and it also synergizes very well with the Grave Injustice passive that reduces cooldowns, because as things die you can just start spamming Soul Harvest more and more and just exploding mobs as you're going through. So you're going to be wearing 6-piece Jade Harvester with area damage and haunt damage on both. You'll have the area damage, haunt damage on your shoulders, and you'll have the haunt damage for sure on your chest piece. I have 50-10 area here on my gloves. And then on the other pieces, it's pretty standard. You're going to prioritize armor, as this is an int class, so they have built-in resist all based on intellect. So armor is what you're going to be looking for on every other piece. Now, there are 2 variations to this build, and I'm going to go over both of them. One is the safer, more tanky version, and then there's the YOLO version that I like to call it. So the variation that I'm running here is using the Belt of Transcendence, which summons a Fiendish Sycophant every time you use a mana spender. So while you're spamming Haunt, you're just spawning these little dudes, and they're basically meat shields. And they run around and they kind of tank some damage for you and help out in survivability throughout the entire rift. And then you use a Unity, coupled with the Unity on your follower. That's 50% damage reduction. For the Bracer slot, we're going to be using Lakumbas, as pretty much every other Witch Doctor build does, with Poison being the priority here. So you get Poison on your T-Pledge and Poison on your shoulders. T-Pledge and Compass Rose is the other ring and jewelry items, with the Poison, as I had said, and then I have area damage here. This isn't optimal. It would be 56 crit, area damage, intelligence, something along those lines, but that's what you're going to be going for. Then you'll have a Vile Hive. This Vile Hive is decent, but it's not perfect. Ideally, you would want area damage, crit hit chance, and haunt with a high 50% or increased damage on the Locust Swarm there. And then with all of the standard Witch Doctor builds, you're going to be using Sacred Harvester. This is a fairly decent Sacred Harvester, but you'll be looking for something that has percent damage and area damage. You can also take Vitality if you need to, but I would go for the highest damage output on this weapon. The legendary gems that you're using are going to be esoteric, just for survivability, because you do a lot of tanking in this build. So what I like to do is, another thing that you want to prioritize is, as you're moving around, when you're in the fight, you want to pay attention to this damage buff that comes from Compass Rose T-Pledge, and want it to be as close to or at 100% when you're soul harvesting. And even though it seems like you would die a lot doing that variation, if you alternate these abilities, and as we go over the abilities, I'll explain this to you more, you can alternate different damage reduction abilities to kind of keep you alive even when there's a ton of mobs around you. So let's go over what I have in the cube, and then we'll get into the abilities. In the cube, we have Furnace, just for increased damage against elites. The Quetzalcoatl, which is standard for any poison or dot build for Witch Doctor. And then we have the Ring of Emptiness, which enables this build to really do out some massive damage. You know, anything that has Haunt and Locust Swarm, 300% increased damage. I typically put that in the cube because that is your highest multiplicative damage increase, so you want that to be 300. If you get a GG one that has like 300% on it and crit, then you can go ahead and put Unity in here, but Unity also always comes with increased damage against elites, so it's better to wear the Unity rather than put it in the cube. Going over the gear here, or the abilities here, so we use Haunt, Poison Spirit, and then Piranha Pronado, which is very useful for survivability and controlling the mobs and also getting them all batched up. And it's also used on many of the Witch Doctor builds. Horrify, Frightening Aspect. Now this really helps you survive. I'll demonstrate here just in town what I'm talking about these alternating cooldowns for survivability. Spirit Walk, Jaunt, which is just helpful when you get in those oh shit moments. You know, you hit Jaunt, or it'll get you through things fast, but a lot of times when you use it to rush in, you get into a very sticky situation quickly. Soul Harvest, Languish, which is kind of standard for every Witch Doctor build. It increases your armor by 10%, and then coupled with the Sacred Harvester, you get 10 stacks, so you're fairly tanky with this build. And then Locust Swarm, Cloud of Insects. This also reduces the damage output of mobs around you that are affected by Locust Swarm. The passive skills, Grave Injustice, super important for this build. The more you can soul harvest, the more damage you're doing. And as things die, you'll notice it. It's just like the first one, you pop it, and then you're casting Haunt to get the cooldown of soul harvest back up. By the second one, things are dying, and then you can soul harvest again and again and again. So it's very critical. Confidence Ritual, you deal additional 25% damage to enemies within 20 yards, and you're just standing right in the shit with this build. So this is almost always benefiting you. Creeping Death, which is required for this build. It just lets your Locust Swarm and Haunt last for almost ever. It doesn't last forever, like on bosses occasionally. I'll notice it drops off because you'll see the tick from your Haunt going much slower. Cast Locust Swarm again and you'll see it pick up again. And then Spirit Vessel. I use Spirit Vessel because it's nice to have the oh shit passive. I have seen some other variations where people are using different like Swampland Attunement, for example. I've seen someone using Swampland Attunement if you think that you're tanky enough and you're not going to die. If you're going hardcore, obviously you always run Spirit Vessel, and I use it on my softcore as well just because it's nice. If you get into a panic situation, at least you know that you have the ability to not go down, at least for a few seconds. So as I was talking about before, you're casting Haunt, you cast this one time, and then when it's time, boom, you do this and it'll do all the damage that you've got from your Haunt and from these ticks on the mobs. And you're standing in a super, you know, say this is a huge area of mobs. You get them all piled up. You've got this. If you Horrify, you'd be amazed, because that horrifies the mobs around you and it increases your armor, so you can tank a lot of damage. The cooldown is very low on this, and so what I like to do is use that as often as I can when I'm in the giant packs, and really hold on to or to Spirit Walk until I really need it, like for something like Frozen or lasers, or you know, I can't see a Desecrator under my feet. Oh, I'll Spirit Walk out real quickly, and then if you're continuing to do the rotation, you know, where you're soul harvesting, you can typically survive with Horrify long enough to get the Spirit Walk back up, especially with the cooldown reduction from when things are dying with Grave Injustice. that's pretty much the gist of it. This build is pretty straightforward, and it's a super awesome alternative to, say, for instance, someone that's been playing Witch Doctor for a while, but they're tired of doing Fire Bats, because Fire Bats has been the meta for, I think this is going to be the 3rd season now. Jade is really, really good. Just to give you an example of how well it's done, or it's doing right now, if we go to the leaderboards here, I think number 5 is Jade with 100 down. Now, he is using the variation that I would call the YOLO variation, and I'll go over that quickly. There's a few minor changes to this. He's using the cat instead of the Vile Hive. I'm assuming just for the damage reduction that you get from this. Then he's also gotten rid of the Unity, which is crazy to me. Like, I've tried this build a few times. It's very, very squishy, but I would imagine in optimal scenarios, running with conventions over Unity, I mean, you can see some huge, crazy numbers come out when you soul harvest during the poison rotation. And then he's also not using the Quetzalcoatl, he's using the Haunting Gridle for 1 extra spirit. So this is the 100% YOLO setup here. But as you can see, I mean, 2,700 Paragons is not that high comparatively to other things on the leaderboard. I mean, we got 4,000 here, and he's done a 100 with Jade. Something more along the lines of what I've been running and what we just discussed is here at a 98 with the Unity and the Belt of Transcendence. So this is and he's also not using Spirit Vessel, so he's using Swampland Attunement. So this is a very, very viable Witch Doctor build and gives you a little more variety rather than having to do Fire Bats every single season. Yes, Fire Bats is super, super strong, but right now, Fire Bats, Jade Harvester, and then your straight up, well, this is a Helltooth Fire Bats. So there's multiple variations of different builds for Witch Doctor. But I will state that I do think that Fire Bats will definitely push a little bit higher than Jade, but the play style on Jade is a lot more fun, in my opinion. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to be playing Witch Doctor through the duration of Season 10. My secondary class, I always run 2. I'm not sure yet. It's going to either be Hydro Wizard or Shadow Demon Hunter. Come and check us out. I stream live on Twitch Monday through Friday. It's at twitch.tv/Dropadooski. I want to thank everybody out there, all the subscribers, all my followers on Twitch, all my Game Wisp subscribers from Twitch. Thank you guys so much for the support. This is going to be the first Witch Doctor video in a group of 3 or 4. I want to go over my Speed Chicken build, the Fire Bats build, and also the Helltooth Gargantuan build. Since I'm doing Witch Doctor this season, I know a lot of these builds are older, but I still want to put them out and give you guys the breakdown of what you can expect to be seeing me doing throughout Season 10. Once again, everybody, thank you so much. Good luck in the Griffs, and Friday night, Season 10. Hell yeah. Peace.